This is another live radio link-up brought to you by the Government Communications GCIS.
Time has gone 5 minutes after the hour, 6 o'clock, and it's a very good evening to you and welcome to it. This our broadcast, and this is brought to you courtesy of Government Communication and Information System, the GCIS, together with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. My name is Karabo Lance. Glad to be in your company this evening for the next coming hour as we talk about the things of importance, like we always do on a Thursday. Welcome to it. And this is not going to be a different Thursday, actually. We definitely going to go on and talk about those things that you want to learn from, and those things that you want to be exposed and informed about, and it's going to be happening on this show this evening. Government Communication and Information System, the GCIS, the Justice and Constitutional Development. Government Communication and Information System, Nomnyango with Justice and Constitutional Development. In that way, I want to encourage you to be part of this broadcast by way of calling in and asking any questions that you might be having with regards to the subject matter that we're going to be tackling this evening. And you can speak in any language of your choice. You're more than welcome to do that. In any of the Nguni languages, you can speak in any of the languages, any of our official languages in South Africa. Well, this evening we're joined in the studio by two guests coming from the department, and it's Ms. Kalevani Pillay. She's the Deputy Director General Legislative Development at the department. Thank you so much, and welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you very much.
All right, and also joining us in the studio is somebody that you always hear during our news broadcast time and time again, especially when it comes to issues of justice and constitutional development, and it's none other than Advocate Mthunzi Maga, and he's the spokesperson at the Ministry of Justice and Correctional Services. Good evening to you, Mthunzi. All right, 100%. There we go. Those are our two guests. And you're wondering what is it that you're going to be talking about this evening? Well, we're definitely going to be talking about this subject matter, and it's called the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill. All right, because recently Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Advocate Michael Masuta, announced that the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill has been published in the Government Gazette for public comments. So our country has recently experienced an increase in the manifestation of hate speech and hate crimes. Now, the South African Human Rights Commission recently stated that 68% of equality complaints received by the Commission for the period of the 1st of April 2015 up until the 29th of February 2016 have been on the basis of race. Now, joining us to discuss this matter, like I said, is our two guests, and you're more than welcome to call us on our toll-free number. It's 0800 142 446. That number again, it's 0800 142 446, toll-free when you're calling from a landline. Otherwise, you can join us on Facebook, the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. On Twitter, it's DOJCD_ZA. Instagram, it's DOJCD. So there we go. All right, first and foremost, let's speak to you, Advocate Maga. What is the main aim of the Prevention and Combating of Hate Crimes and Hate Speech Bill?
You will recall, Karabo, that there had been, or there is, an escalating rate of racist incidents where people's right to human dignity had been violated in a manner that leaves much to be desired. Mm-hmm. You had witness incidents where people had been called monkeys. The K word had been used several times on a particular race of people, which makes them feel less human than the other race. You have had dogs lynched on farmers by, in particular, white police officers. There had been lately a video of a black person being pushed into a coffin, whites alive, which was clearly an attempt to bury that person alive. There had been images of employees' faces being defaced, where in one incident in Lanseria Airport, a white supervisor had asked the employees, about 5 of them, to pose for a photo shoot. Took the pictures, and they thought that it's part of it's work related. It's going to be posted around the walls of the corridors at work.
Yeah.
The next thing, they saw this image circulating in emails at work with their faces being defaced and put pictures of baboons. Now, prosecutors in the Randburg Magistrate Court declined to prosecute and said that that person should be dealt with internally within Lanseria. There were service providers to Lanseria Airport. Now, when that came to my attention, I was still the spokesperson of the NPA then. I took it up with the prosecutor and I said, but why are you not prosecuting? She said, no, the person had apologized, and therefore we thought that was the end of it, when that person could have been charged with criminal. Now, it appears that this was not the first incident where these people had been humiliated. The Director of Public Prosecutions in Gauteng, South Gauteng, Advocate Andrew Chauke, then reviewed that decision, and that man was prosecuted and pleaded guilty, paid a fine, ended up with a criminal record. But then he had to be charged with criminal injury, which is it's a verbal assault in a way, where you degrade a person's dignity in a manner that's humiliating without actually assaulting that person physically. So minister would call it verbal assault at times, if for example you refer to him with the K word sometimes. So I was convicted. It was all because we do not have a legislation that criminalizes racist acts from a particular race or towards another race. Now, we got to a stage where a decision had to be taken to say, dialogue has been there, social cohesion efforts have been made, but still they are not yielding the desired results.
Yeah.
You will recall that it was yesterday or Tuesday, the Concord judgment.
Against, I think it was yesterday.
SARS employee.
That's correct, yes.
Where Chief Justice Mpho said, why is it that in view of the escalating rate of racist incidents, we still do not see a firm, fittingly sustainable and disapproving response to these incidents? Now, you have then the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development unit that is led by Advocate Calvano Pillay, putting together this bill to say, let's put an end to it. Talks have not yielded the desired results. Judge Mkhweng has spoken. Let's go to the people and hear their views. That is the genesis of these revelations. I think Advocate Pillay can take it forward.
Yes, I think while the hate speech provisions are very important, I must point out that the bill is not just about hate speech. It's about much more than that, and other very important issues such as hate crimes. Hate crime is motivated on the basis of a person's prejudice or bias, and where you commit the crime because of one or more of the following characteristics of a person. Race is one of them, gender is the other, religion, belief, culture, etc. So I think we need to take a note of the fact that the bill does include the other elements as well, which have not been criminalized at this point. If you commit a crime on one of those grounds that I set out, you will now be committing a hate crime, and we have the relevant penalties for those kind of crimes as well.
We're going to be talking about those coming up later, so make sure that you don't go away. 0800 142 446. That's 0800 142 446. Ko magalelo ela mtheletsi ge le gore mhlomong ke gona o bulelang sealemoya sa gago re thabela gore re ko mo wena mhlomong se gona le sengwe se leng gore o ganya ka gore o tlhalositse sona go ba se leng gore o nyaka gore re bolela ka sona concerning the prevention and combating of hate crimes and hate speech bill. That's what we're talking about this evening. You're more than welcome to use that toll-free number. It is a toll-free number, by the way, if you're going to be using a Telkom line. If you're using your cell phone, just call us very quickly. We'll take your details down and we'll definitely call you back. So do that. 0800 142 446. And sitting on our Facebook and Twitter panel, it's our man Victor Pala, and he's going to be taking some of your Facebook and Twitter messages. So DOJCD_ZA and the Department of Justice and Correctional Services there. So I beg your pardon, Justice and Constitutional Development. That's the one. So call us in and would like to hear from you. I think maybe let's start opening the telephone line. It's a very interesting subject, this, and I suspected we're going to have quite a lot of callers regarding this, and it looks like we are having already callers calling in. And this time around, coming from Limpopo, Kolepalale, we're chatting to Breeza. Breeza, good evening to you.
Yes, how's it?
I'm good, and you, Breeza? Yeah, what is your question?
Hello?
Yeah, Rutele DJ, Breeza?
Yes, I'm playing the Caravana. You go with the wala go tsana go ga nang go expire like this one khale ke nale tshiare ne ke sa re itanna bene ban tsaka ga re iti bene ka tsari tsak bene ai ke wa u swa muso le motho wa re go na ri ari ke mo re iti bene so
okay, thank you so much, Breeza, for your question. I really appreciate it. 0800 142 446. That's 0800 142 446. And this time around, let's go to Stevens. Stevens is in Pretoria. Good evening to you, Stevens.
Yes, let me switch the radio off.
All right, yeah, please do that.
It's to do with the sister state of my brother.
All right. All right, what is your question, Stevens?
Pardon?
What is your question or comment?
My question is that what somebody who robbed my mother to sign to elect him as an executor on the property. Only to find that, on the estate. Only to find that when I see the document, there was someone whom he put in, the late brother, to be an executor. So this guy is fighting us around since 2010. 2005. The brother died in 2005.
Okay, so you want to know how it's not necessarily related to what we're talking about this evening, but we'll definitely see how we're gonna tackle that. So thank you so much, Stevens, for calling in. I appreciate it. All right, it's gone 17 after 6 o'clock. I just want to make you aware that we might have one or two questions that are not related to the subject matter of this evening, but these programs are seen as such. They're seen as a platform of helping our people in terms of whatever justice problems that they might be having. They're popular in that way. We've had different subjects that we dealt with, and people will somehow deviate from that a little bit. So don't be worried if you do get that. People see us as one government, so they see us as a solution point for them. So 0800 142 446. Maybe let's go on and let me park those questions for now because they're not related to what we're talking about, and we'll see if we can tackle them on the other end during the course of the program here. Maybe let's go on and talk about maybe the question that's got to do with the department. I wonder, has the department really conducted any study on other similar pieces of legislation before drafting this bill? Have we done something like that?
Yes, we've done something like that. We've done quite extensive research into legislation from other countries. For example, we've looked at Kenya, we've looked at Australia, we've looked at Ireland, we've looked at New Zealand and France. Now, I must say from our research, you'll find that there are different degrees to which the offense is prohibited or the way the laws are drafted, but there is definitely precedent for hate speech provisions in the laws of other countries. So it's not something new. It is there. It's a degree to which it is prohibited. And so we are quite satisfied that there is a good precedent for this kind of law.
You're talking about the extent at which they are they're dealt with. Are there any comparing South Africa and the other countries? How severe are we, or do we see more of other countries are doing that?
Yes, there are lots of countries that do this. I must say that France is actually one of the most extremes, which goes even beyond what we have done. They specifically state in their law that they are prohibiting public and private communication which is defamatory or insulting or which incites discrimination. In Kenya, for instance, they prohibit insulting, abusive or threatening words which is intended to stir up ethnic hatred with regard to having regard to all the circumstances. So there are different limitations, different prohibitions, but there's definitely such a clause. In Ireland, they prohibit the publication and distribution of written material or the use of words or where people behave or display written material in any place other than the inside of a private residence or inside a private residence, so that the words or behavior or material are heard or seen by persons outside the residence. For instance, if you have a person working in your premises and if you display a material that is abusive, it is actually prohibited in a country like Ireland.
Like in this instance, what happened at Lanseria, the case that we just spoke about, in Lanseria, where the pictures were taken and faces are defigured and put, faces of monkeys were put there, something like that.
Exactly. Our bill deals with the display of such information as well, and it prohibits such display where it can be regarded as a hate speech in terms of the bill.
Mr. Malka, would you like to add on that?
No, I think we're fine so far.
0800 142 446. That's 0800 142 446. Let me go to Ntombi in Soshanguve. Good evening to Ntombi. I beg your pardon, Ntombi. Let's go on and we move over to Mohlatupa. Mohlatupa in the Free State. Good evening to you.
ke ne ke botsa ntate ka ga bore na then e bang ke le lekgatitala yo then be ke batla go bula case na e bang ke batla go itropa na go tla goneletsea gobane ba bang ba di bula ba tshepa ya itropa ba goneletsea le potso e nngwe ya ka ya bobedi ke na ha eba ke le lekgatitala seo ke ka le ha motho yo aka ditswang ka letlale na motho yo aka ditswa go botsela a tla go kopa tshwarelo go nna jalo ka hantse le go jalo ka tsela jontsela tsa motho go se aba o kopa tshwarelo ya batabeng ya fela na go batla o tsebanta.
All right, thank you so much. Mohlatupa all the way out in the Free State. 0800 142 446. Let's deal with these two questions. The first one being, if somebody is a victim and they go and open up a case of this magnitude, verbal abuse, you might want to call it, and they later want to drop it, is that type of thing allowed, seeing the nature or the way we're trying to tackle this issue and the way government is trying to actually do away with this type of thing? Is it allowed for somebody to open a case and just later feel like, nah, I'm just going to drop it, or will the law actually prevent them from doing that?
Oh, okay. Generally, we don't encourage that people drop cases, because remember, those are resources of government.
Right.
So the minute you open a case, the police officer assigned or allocated that case docket, the stationery that you use, the energy that he spends, the airtime he uses, the petrol that he uses, you actually not encouraged to do it, but it can be prevented, because sometimes people will discuss this and get a mediator, person apologizes, or there'll be some form of compensation, after which then the person feels good, he's not prepared to go through the entire criminal justice system or court process. But it's always encouraged for people to make use of the court processes, because we are all having the interests of the victims at heart, and therefore when people open cases feeling aggrieved, the more they cases go through the system, the more people will then get motivated to report cases and come forward. When there are those that open cases and withdraw them, it actually deters others from opening up cases or reporting cases. So always encourage people not to do that. But for example, in rape cases, if a child is under the age, is a girl under the age of 16, we don't withdraw those cases. But where it's an adult, at times reluctantly prosecutors do withdraw, but the person must file a withdrawal statement.
But does it depend on them having to withdraw these cases? Can't we then say, if an individual is withdrawing a case, that's fine. That's them not wanting to go through the justice system, like you say. But can't we then say we will still go on and prosecute, or how does it work?
You will need that complainant if it's an individual who had laid a complaint or opened a case against the perpetrator. But in a case like this Barrow case, where the word was referred, or in fact was referenced to a lot of people, more than one person, it would then be difficult for one person to say, no, forgive her. She acted in the spirit of the moment, and therefore I'm fine with it. She just needs some counseling and all of that, because that affected the entire black nation that had been insulted. So in such cases, it's difficult. You can't. The state will proceed.
Okay. 0800 142 446. That's 0800 142 446. Let's speak to Tsepo from Klerksdorp. Tsepo? Legaindad. Putswal Nairi. Right. Yeah.
Why department is who collaborate with these two departments, Department of Education and Labor. In education, who come together the hate speech, hate crime, or have a whole reason for it about Balabadi, Mutual owner, Jimmy Koya, I don't know who could go in. The department of labor, some of the things about Honoho, internal Honoho later, come to the internal the employer. A Honoho, the open about another thing that was not meeting at a committee in Hano, every week by the meeting. Or the Honoho be a committee, the could cool. And then the government, I look at it's a lot of things the past. The past, not any hole. Legitimate speech and not to come out. I don't know how I did that. How about Molo and Magal, what was, but I wouldn't make it about him. I would be what was in order to make it. But I can't come like he was really having the very key because Banava Hola, how I did you do? How much I did not to look good. How I did well, I don't be ready
right.
Because of Haika Eliano. If I look at the whole how is Julian? One of the why internet going in Kiwi? This I do, what I get in Kiwi.
Right. Okay.
So why don't I think you give another Kiwi? So how the Kiwi, what the Kiwi? If I only live in enough of return, but not by
okay. Thank you so much, Tsepo from Klerksdorp. I really appreciate your input, and we'll definitely tackle your question. Let's go to Phil from Klerksdorp as well. Phil?
Good day. Thank you for taking my call.
All right, Phil, I'm going to ask you to speak a little bit louder from me. I'm just battling to hear you.
Okay, I said thank you for taking my call. It's lovely to be able to interact with you guys.
All right. What is your question or comment there, Phil?
All right. I only very briefly looked at the proposed bill, so I'm not familiar with all its clauses. What concerned me was that I did not find a very clear definition of what would be considered an insult, how an insult becomes hate speech. People can insult you, but without inciting violence or discrimination. So I wasn't very clear on that, and that's the problem. If the definitions aren't very clear, then you can get people taken to court over stupid stuff, and as your guest also said, it can be a waste of state resources.
All right, is that all the questions that you have, Phil?
Well, I think that's my main concern.
Yeah.
The clarity of the definition of what constitutes hate speech.
100%. Phil, thank you so much for your call. Appreciate it. All right, it's gone 29 minutes after 6 o'clock, and welcome to it if you've just joined us. This is our live interactive program. It happens every Thursday, and it's called Justice. Let's Talk Justice, Live Your Rights show, brought to you courtesy of Government Communication and Information System, together with the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. My name is Karabo Lanson, and glad to be in your company for the next coming 35 minutes. We're tackling the issue. A bill has been published in the Government Gazette for public comments, and that's the bill that seeks to address issues of the prevention and combating of hate crimes and hate speech. And that's what we're talking about this evening. And joining us, we are pleased to have Ms. Kalevani Pillay, as well as Advocate Mthunzi Maga, and we're talking about this issue. Maybe let's go back to the questions that Tsepo had, and he wants to find out, is the department collaborating with sister departments, the Department of Education, especially the Department of Basic Education, and as well as the Department of Labor? And he says the importance of that is that education needs to start from the bottom. Children needs to be educated as far as these are concerned, the hate speeches and the hate crimes and so forth. And he's quite worried about the issue that he feels that we are scared to face the past. He says government is scared to face the past in a way that we do not call these words in full. Gives an example, says we call it the K word. Now, maybe let's start from there, Advocate Maga. Is it prohibited to call the K word in full, maybe in a public platform like we are now?
Honestly, I've always be confused why people don't use the word kafir. And when you use it, people are like, maybe the K word, and when you write it, maybe we should put inverted commas. I'm not sure why is that. When you are making reference to a statement that had been made by someone else, even on TV, when Chief Justice Mkhweng was reading the judgment, when he gets to the word kafir, it's on mute, so I don't know the rationale behind it, because the more you use it, the more people will understand the origin and the connotation thereof. But I think maybe Kale can take it further.
Kale, maybe just explain to us, are there any reasons that were given, especially maybe from the broadcaster's point of view, why, for instance, they would mute the word kafir if it's broadcast or in any other public platforms?
Because I think the word is essentially offensive. That is why it would be blocked out. And I think if you have reference to the Constitutional Court case, the court made reference to the use of the word and what it actually means. And I just want to read a quote from that case. The judgment quotes somebody who wrote, "When a black man is called a kafir by somebody of another race, as a rule, the term is one which is disparaging, derogatory, and contemptuous, and causes humiliation." So I think, and the judgment goes on to discuss at length the history of the word, etc., etc. So essentially, it is abusive.
Right.
So,
but if we use it, I feel that Tsepo is quite worried about if we use it in a context of educating the masses. Are we not going to say it in full? For instance, if it had to be used in class, and children would have to be educated as far as hate crimes and hate speech is concerned, should we not use the word in full?
The judgment uses it extensively because it deals with the particular context. So you cannot say that it's just totally blocked out, but it's the context that determines the word. For educational purposes, of course, it's there. It's in the judgment, actually.
Yeah, that's why I understand why umntu if ubalisa ibali or ubalisa loo nto umntu ebeyithethile athi usebenzise igama elithi kafara, why do you mute it? You understand? Because at that stage he's not directing it to you, but he's saying someone else had used it, which is why I opened a case of criminal injury against the person. Right. So I don't understand from a broadcasting point of view why they would mute it when in the judgment itself it's there.
but that's in case of a reference of referring to it when it's happened.
Because even when you report as a journalist,
even when you
are reporting an incident that has happened as a matter of fact.
All right, okay. We'll come back to that. I want to follow it up. We'll come back to that, really. But let's move over to Phil's question. And he says, he's had a look at the bill, and some things are not clear there, especially the definition of insult. How does it become hate speech? He says.
Yes, if I can deal with that. Hate speech is defined in the bill in clause 4. I think those who have access to it can have reference to those sections. Now I must say that there are certain words that we would use in a piece of legislation, and those words carry its ordinary meaning. So I think we all know what an insult is. But in the context of the bill, we say that any person who intentionally, by means of any communication whatsoever, to one or more persons, advocates hatred towards another person or group of persons, or is threatening, abusive, or insulting towards any other person or group of persons, which demonstrates a clear intention of having regard to all the circumstances to incite harm to any person or group of persons, or to stir up violence, or bring into contempt or ridicule any person or groups of persons. And then we list the characteristics in terms of which you may insult the person. Race is not the only one, gender is another, sex is another, or ethnic or social origin. So in the context, I think we would know what an insulting word is. So we need not define every word in a bill. It carries its ordinary meaning, and if a matter goes to court on the basis that you said something insulting, then the court will interpret what it means in the context in which it was said. So I think that's how I would actually answer that.
Can I just come in so that from a practical point of view we know what we're talking about, trying to simplify it. My colleague I know is very, very cautious when it comes to using this word. And if we expand it and practically, we had incidents of xenophobia or attacks on foreign nationals. We call them amakwerekwere. That's offensive to them. And you're insulting him if you call them Okwerekwere, because there's no such. It's either you are Shona if you're from Zimbabwe, you're from you're Maasai if you're from rural Nairobi or Kenya. You understand? There's no such a person called Okwerekwere. A person who's an Indian, we call him Ikula. That's an insulting term. You know, if you are a colored, you call him Lao. Some people don't like it that way, but that one is contentious. For example, if one is Zulu, you call him Inzule. They don't take kindly of that. So those are some of the terms that would, in the final bill, when we've consulted, some people will raise this during the consultation and public hearings to say, these are the words that I found offensive. For example, for a gay person, some people call them stubborn, and some people wouldn't really take kindly of that, because you are actually insulting him if you call him stubborn, because that word is derogatory in its nature.
Right. All right. 0800 142 446. The most interesting one I've heard was when referring to the ethnic groups, for instance, and very, very derogatory. If you're going to call somebody Lepedi, for instance, I'll give you an example of that. It's very, very insulting. It's actually Mopedi. thin lines, really, and we need to be very, very careful of that. Before I take a caller, would you like to add on something there?
Yes, I think there was another question about whether we collaborate with other government departments, and I think it's a very important question, which I would like to answer. One of the clauses in the bill deals with the prevention of hate crimes and hate speech. And in the bill, we specifically say that the cabinet members responsible for justice, policing, communications, and importantly, basic and higher education, home affairs, etc., they must offer training and conduct education and information campaigns on the prohibition against hate crimes and hate speech, ensure that all public officials who may be involved in the investigation and prosecution of the crimes are educated and informed on the prohibition against these crimes, provide assistance and advice to any person who wants to lodge a complaint of hate crimes, and train public officials on the prohibition and prevention and combating of hate speech and hate crimes. So I think the bill doesn't just deal with the criminal prohibitions, it deals with an element of prevention.
Right. 0800 142 446. Okay. It's gone 20 minutes just before 7. Let's go to the telephone lines, and thank you so much for your Facebook comments and questions. I see they're coming through, as well as your Twitter questions coming through as well. I really appreciate those. You can keep them coming. DOJCD_ZA, or the Department of Justice and Constitutional Development. Let's go to Sponelo from Ndwendwe. Sponelo?
Yes, sir.
Good, Baba.
I'm calling from Ndwendwe, but I want to say good evening to you and your guest there.
Yeah, Bagmamele, Baba.
Yeah, my question is, what must I do if someone has inserted me on the phone only to find out when I'm trying to call the number back, the user of that number has to sell the SIM card to cover everything.
All right, thank you so much. Sibonelo, siyayizwa indaba yakho, sizabona ukuthi ne sizoyithekla kanjani.
It was an SMS. But when I started to call that number back, I thought that maybe the card has been removed, or the SIM card has been stored by someone. Both the person, there's no way on my phone.
All right, thank you so much, Sibonelo. Let's move over to Lebohang from Eliwal North, listening via Takalani FM. Lebohang.
Baby.
Look at that. Putwa hawe regindat.
Kinale putwa mona to kutransfer 1. Agitse kawela ka inati. Ai bamba to bathatile ka tlung ke mmele ntati ba se ofumane ha ba qabana nawe ndena ba qabana na ndi qabang ba gentsa bona. Ona le mutha o apelo ka ditale ntswe are S amsuthu emong are S ya mukhosa kapa ya muthepu ibe yeno jwalo ntoni khona o thusala jwang. Then umbuzo wesibini ingaba bayakwazi ukuphuma i-Department of Justice baze kwi-rural areas bazofundisa abantu more especially about these topics, because these topics are very, very important. Why am I asking this question? It is because a few months ago, up until today, we are having a complaint whereby to the supermarket, the bosses of the big shop supermarket can pay, but they are using the same way the K word, but man. How are they going to deal with that? Some of them, they are not permanently employed. Some of them, general kiseu sibitiseu kiseu subulaiseu ibe kebi reka gona o thusa la jwang re ntho tseno di ska gona o phetha di tsala ba mojeno wa hlotsi ayo server sentence ai a khutla ke petile morena ka bamela tagalani machem
before via molebs akathola the first one with the married couples ke kopongo hlalositswa na hape
batho bana ba di ba chatile ba kala ba qabana emong ona le bitso la bitang fumana ba qaba pele ba lwana ba sebedisa lentswe ring S ya Mosotho, S ya Mokhosa kapa ya Mothepu. Yeah, wabona kizofa ulibizela bitsulena man.
But
kisatani ya Mthepu satani ya Mosotho obahlakilibizani.
Right.
Asitho hako yenu na ikalamono ntwa kathundu ikalamono nthozenze jwalo fumane upetelo solwani wa bitsola mapolisa o tshwara motho. So e ka gona go rarolela jwang taba ye umre.
Talibs, thank you so much. Takalani FM, thank you so much for your questions and for broadcasting this message to your listeners. Let's go to Precious from Pretoria, and I will go to the Facebook messages just now shortly. Precious in Pretoria.
Hi, good evening. How are you?
We're very well, Precious. Thank you so much for calling. What is your question?
I've got two questions for the DOJ official and the advocate.
Right.
I want to know in the legislation that they have passed, why is it so lenient as to be called something like criminal injuria? You know, when it says people can be charged for criminal injuria, these offenses are done by people, one, with power, those who have got money, and quite often they do it to people with nothing at all.
Right.
And when I am charged for criminal injuria, I can do it repeatedly. Why is it such a light charge when they know it dents people's image, it's deeper into people so as to belittle them? The second one is about our justice system, the courts, the very prosecutors that he talked about who would refuse to prosecute, and you know, what is it that they can do? Because currently in this country, we are aware that we have got a very weak justice system that is so unreliable, and it is always failing the poor of the poorest, who don't have money to pay, who don't have a say, who don't have anybody who can stand for them. And then my comment will be to the DOJ lady, Pillay. When are they going to engage the social bodies, society at large? Because things like the hate speeches and hate crimes are done by people who are basically hurt and angry.
All right, thank you so much.
Who are not, I mean, it's issues of socialization and upbringing, where people, for example, in this country, it's now fueled by the fact that the black person is in power. How do we take it back to society where we can bring back that culture of being a society, not a black and a white person?
Thank you so much to you, Precious. You're listening through one of the radio stations in Pretoria. I really appreciate it. Maybe let me take the final caller quickly, and we'll go to the questions now shortly. Let's take Musa from Durban. Musa, Durban. Musa, Durban. Ngiyaphila unjani baba?
Ngikhona futhi.
Umbuzo wakho uthini?
Ngilalela la from Elanda 18.4.
Awuzweka baba.
Baba uthini?
Okay, let's terminate that call quickly. Let's try to call Musa back. That line is not very clear. Let's try to call him back and patch him up again. All right, the Facebook question that I spoke about before, it really disappears from the screen. These guys have got a tendency of, they're very familiar with the delete button, so I don't trust them. Let me tackle that quickly before they do that. Thank you so much to you, Tsepisho wa Mkhumuti. And Tsepisho sent us a Facebook question, and they want to know, are there any outreach activities regarding this bill in rural areas, and what evidence one needs to report hate speech? Very interesting question there. Thank you so much to you, Tsepi. So maybe let's start with that and work our way backwards.
Okay, thanks. That's a very good question from Tsepi. So we intend and we plan to roll out outreach programs and awareness campaigns where we go to, because the victims mainly here are domestic workers, and they are farm workers, and some of the guys that work on the road in construction companies that you see when you drive through any construction site. Now, we plan to have engagements with those people, but when we've finalized that plan, we'll then come here and announce where we're going and when and the venues and all of that. But also there is a parliamentary process that will still unfold to give the people an opportunity to be heard by parliamentarians in various provinces and constituencies, so that the bill at the end of the day, people can own up to it and say we contributed to it. So we plan to do that. From 9 until 2 o'clock this morning, I was at Vets University, where there was an engagement organized by Media Monitoring Africa, which had invited non-governmental organizations and academics and researchers from all around South Africa, where we had a very fruitful engagement, and we took some of the inputs that they raised there. So there's that consultation that is ongoing. I don't know if I should also touch on the last lady that called in relation to criminuria. When I made reference to criminuria, I was giving a background to why we're here, why we're deciding to legislate and criminalize hate speech, because you could only charge for criminuria, which attracted a lenient sentence. Now we are moving towards a legislation that will attract a tougher sentence or harsher sentence, because if you are convicted of hate speech as a first offender, it's 3 years or fine, alternatively fine, and if you are a repeat offender, it's going to be 10 years or a fine, if I'm correct. Yes. Yeah. So if you look at those penalties, it tells you that we're adopting a very aggressive stance, which is a deviation from your criminuria, which attracts a lenient sentence. So I was just making an example to say why we are here. And secondly, in addition to a criminal prosecution, a person still has a recourse of suing for defamation through a civil action. There's nothing that prevents him from doing that, even if the person has been convicted, right, and given a fine. And the training that will be conducted on police and prosecutors, she is saying the criminal justice system is not efficient. I beg to differ, because if you look at the case that I narrated to you earlier, and the Sparrow case, which is convicted of criminuria, it's a system that works as a well-oiled machine, which is why we're putting now a legislative framework to arm those prosecutors so that they can have more ammunition. In the event that one is not satisfied with a withdrawal of the case that he has opened with the police or the prosecution, there are review avenues that can still be explored, as I've explained in the baboons defacing case of those employees from Lasira Airport, to say when senior prosecutor in Randburg had declined, I took the matter up with the DPP in Gauteng, under whose jurisdiction the matter falls and under whose authority that prosecutor falls, reports. As a result, those people were that person was convicted and has a criminal record.
Right. Would you like to add something there, Ms. Pillay?
Yes, I think in respect of the question about when are we going to engage with society at large, and so that we don't have a society that is based where we don't see just black and white and we don't have these racial issues. I think I just want to say that in that regard, this bill is not intended to solve all the problems, but I just want to mention some other initiatives in the department, such as the National Action Plan Against Racism, which has been consulted upon by the department since last year. What we are trying to do there is to have a plan against racism, and it arises out of certain other work that the department has been undertaking for quite a while. So that National Action Plan will come up with a plan of action of what we are going to do to combat racism. That's one issue. The other matter that we have underway as well is the Equality Act, where we're trying to make, where we want to make certain improvements to that act. There are certain sections of that act that has never been implemented, such as the promotion of equality. That's a very important element, and we want to tighten up that act so that we can implement it, and that we intend to take to Parliament, to Cabinet for approval and into Parliament early next year. And I think that is very important because it's going to place obligations on not only government but the private sector as well, in terms of what they do to promote equality and how we monitor and measure that. And I think so we're looking at lots of broader mechanisms, and this bill is one of those elements. And I think the criminalization of hate speech is what will take a crime where you just have recourse to the law in terms of criminuria at the current moment. It's going to become a more serious offense when the bill is enacted.
Right. 7 minutes just before 7 o'clock. Let me take two callers quickly. These people have been holding on for a bit too long. Let me start with Musa. Musa, good evening to you. Dumelan dat. Ke dela ka morenaka.
a ke mona teacher
Potso wa re ke Musa ne?
Musa Evan.
Yeah.
I'm the from Inanda for
I'll go ahead that.
That's right.
Tabela utlwa mo wena. Potso wa re?
Ngicela karabo. Let's say umuntu ukhuluma amagama enkhuluma ngawo lapho ama hate speech yalo njalo. And then bese in case ne i-penalty umuntu ayibhadalayo emphathwe kabi or iya e-court na. And then my second question, it is yini bayenzayo mhlambe uyemakhaya ubufundisa like semakhaya nemakhosi kakhulukazi ibaluleke kakhulu. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Musa. That line was pretty bad, but I managed to get bits and pieces of your second question. I failed to get a little bit of that first question there, but I think it's got to do with how severe is the punishment with regards to some of these offences that we're talking about. The second one being any communication that's done with the traditional leaders in terms of education of this, as far as this is concerned. So we're going to talk about that. But let me take Veli quickly. Veli, you calling from Polokwane? Veli in Polokwane?
Yes, hello.
Legendad.
Sikhona njani baba?
Siyaphila baba. Umbuzo kuthini?
Uyazi laba nginenkinga ne. I have it's like me like Niena Hayabu, like one of the warehouse in Ladana. So what happened is these people, they're owing municipality something like 200,000 of electricity. And I moved in 2014 because of my previous space was getting smaller. So this one, it was good. But after all, I spoke to the landlord of that place. He said, no, the problem is with municipality and all that. And then I just asked him, how did it come to a point where municipality left you owing him 200,000 of electricity? So now when it's like he had another warehouse which was vacant, but it didn't put me there. So now I'm suffering because of
very, maybe just short and sweet. Is your question related to hate crimes or hate speeches?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe let's try to get to the point quickly in terms of what is it exactly that you're worried about. I'm not trying to be rude, but maybe let's drop the background of it. Just tell us exactly is it that you're worried about.
All right. What I'm worried about is that they had 2 vacant places, and then they put me to that one. When I complained, they didn't listen to me. And then on the other one, it was like they put the other white guy who does not have problem that I have of electricity. Now I'm using the solar system, and then I can't use all my machinery in my workshop. So that's my problem.
All right, Veli, we'll see how we're going to tackle that. It wasn't quite clear to me in terms of what we're talking about, but we'll see if we can walk around it and see how we can help you. Thank you so much for calling. Ndeboheng on the line. Ndeboheng. Ndeboheng, are you there?
Yes,
okay, thank you so much for calling, Debo. What is your question?
The question I think you want and now is named. The only thing I want to check is how do you report this case, because now this is the time whereby especially marriages is it. I'm I have to leave a home mama anything I can't even tell you over the line. That is when it's where maybe can you call isn't now.
So you want to know where you can report it?
Yes, I want to report.
Okay. All right. Well, that should be a simple one there to tackle in terms of where you can report. Thank you so much, then, Dabuheng. Maybe let's hold on. Let's hold on with the lines. We've got a couple of questions that we need to go through. Let's hold on with that. Let's work our way backwards. There, Ms. Pillay. Let's start with this one. To report these type of offences, where can one go?
Well, if there are any incidents now up till the time that the bill is signed into law, I think you can report any crime that to your nearest police station. But unfortunately, it will be dealt with in terms of the laws of the day, which means that you will not have access to the most serious offence of hate speech or hate crime. It would be criminal injuria, or it would be assault or any other incident that you want to report as usual. But when this act, when this bill becomes an act, then you would have recourse to the remedies in this act, and the same situation in terms of reporting to your nearest police station is what would happen, where you would open a case and you would have an investigator assigned who would then investigate.
All right, Veli, I'm going to park your question for now. It's not clear to me. Maybe we'll go back to it when we do have enough time. Please, I'm not disregarding you. I just want to work through some of the questions that I have that are a bit clearer. Should we have a time, or should we have time afterwards? We'll definitely go back to yours. Let's go to Musa's questions. He wants to find out the relationship that you have with the traditional leaders in terms of imparting them with information and educate them about this bill. Is there anything like that that's happening at the present moment?
I indicated earlier butuba ngaba ethubeni sizawuthi bene program apho soyothetha nabantu ngelwimi abazaziyo. Umzekelo uba uthetha iSpedi sizawuya kwindawo size nee-officials ezithetha iSpedi, uba uthetha isiXhosa siye nee-officials ezithetha isiXhosa. So as part of that outreach program and consultations, public hearings, as a department we undertake to do that, but also there's a process or a stage that will be undertaken by Parliament, which will go to the people constituencies and say, here is a bill that has been put together by Department of Justice to address into racism. So singenza njani, ni nani ibona njani. Now abantu ke abazi community leaders are traditional leaders and ward councillors and church leaders. So ngabo bantu ke ngoku kuzawudityana nabo xa kusiwa pha bamobilize abantu baye eholweni kuyo ecaweni kuyo embizweni apho ke ngozawuxoxa zonke zonto ezo. So umbuzo ka Musa ngulo. There was also another question on how do you collect evidence. Text messages, WhatsApp, any form of communication, email, inbox on Facebook on timeline. What you do is you screen munch all that conversation and put it in a file, because even your phone has a file, or you just connect a cable to your laptop and open a file and keep all that information there, so that when you go to the police station you're able to say, here is the evidence of this derogatory words that have been used by this person, insulting my integrity or my person and dignity because of my ethnicity or the religion or sexual orientation. So that evidence will help. Even currently,
it's easier though. Sorry, Advocate Margaret. It's easier when it's in a written form, like your text messages.
It's very easy.
But if it's verbal, how can one deal with it?
One, you have to record. During the conversation, you can quickly record a person.
If you feel it's
going there, because in most cases, when people have confrontation, even on the road, there's a road rage. You see that this is getting somewhere, you quickly put your phone on record and record everything. But when a person has insulted you over the phone, it's your word against that person, and the fact that the phone itself will have a call register, which will corroborate the fact that indeed that person had contacted you or had a telephone conversation with you. But whether or not he uttered those words or not, it's an evaluation of evidence that will be adjudicated upon in a court of law. But it's more advisable that people record any conversation that you feel is offensive and you are very uncomfortable with.
If somebody is an ex-convict, for instance, maybe let's say somebody has raped and he was convicted of that crime and he was sentenced and he served their time, and now they've just came out, they've been released, they're free, and that particular person is being called a rapist. When rapist and all of those things, does that constitute a hate crime or hate speech?
It's the truth for the public benefit. If you are convicted of rape, you are rapist. If you had been convicted of theft, you are a thief. If you are convicted of corruption, you are corrupt. So there's nothing offensive about that, because you went to jail for that.
Okay.
But you cannot say that before a person is convicted. That's why it's wrong to call people criminals
if they're not.
If that person has not been convicted, you can be sued for that. You'll remember the case of Robert McBride, when the citizen called him a murderer. He went to court and said, but I had been given presidential pardon as part of TRC and all of that, because I was a liberation struggle activist, and therefore I did that in the context of it being politically motivated. But the court says, but you did murder people.
So you are
a murderer, and the citizen was right, so it was vindicated. So I'm saying, if you'd been convicted, you are justified in being called, or that person is justified in calling you a murderer, because indeed we are convicted of murder. You can call Oscar Pistorius a murderer. You can call the wife of the former judge Makubela a murderer, because they're convicted of murder.
Right. If there's a conviction, then yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's go on to the next question. We've dealt with the one with rural workshops that are to be undertaken. We've heard from Advocate Maga talking about that. We've dealt with the one about Tutilo, like for instance calling people names. Labohang, we've dealt with that one there. Telephonic ones, we've just dealt with it in terms of how you can deal with it. If you've got any SMSs that can prove that somebody has indeed offended you in that context or in that way, you can maybe store those and put them as evidence. And then film, we just dealt with your one in terms of a clear definition of what an insult is. All right, let's maybe go on to Veli's one if we can. I don't know how we're going to put this one. We've got about 2 minutes to go, really. I feel Veli is feeling that it was a racist act against him, where the treatment given to him and the treatment given to another white candidate, for lack of a better word, was not the same. Maybe let me put it that way. Will that constitute as any of what we're talking about this evening a hate crime, for instance, because maybe he was dealt with in that way because he's black, and the other person, because they're white, they were dealt with differently and more maybe openly? It's the issue of the 200 rand owed to municipality and him not having access to a property and so forth. So in other words, in short, maybe let me put it this way: if somebody gets treated differently because they're black, and the next person because they're white, they get treated better, can somebody lodge a complaint?
Not necessarily. I think there are other remedies to deal with that kind of discrimination. Here we are dealing with a hate crime, where, for instance, a person was assaulted or the like, kind of where physical harm was caused, or where, and a hate speech is where you are insulted or spoken to in a manner that's threatening or abusive, and on the ground. So I think if you are discriminated on any other ground, you have recourse to the equality courts, which is a civil remedy, but you will have to prove that you were discriminated against, and obviously the other person will have to defend it, but that's a civil remedy. So it depends on the facts of the case, I would think, and it has to be a hate speech or hate crime that would give you recourse to the law in terms of this bill.
All right, Veni, maybe that's where you need to go if you can approach the Equality Court and just explain to them in detail what had happened. And if you've got any proof of that, if you can produce any proof with regards to that, you definitely will be getting help from them. So thank you so much. Let me thank you for taking part in our evening's program, all the callers that have called in. Thank you so much to all the radio stations that have been part of this broadcast of this evening. Thank you so much to the team for doing an absolutely amazing job. And obviously, last but not least, thank you so much to Ms. Kalevani Pillay, Deputy Director General of the department there, as well as Advocate Mthunzi Maga, spokesperson of the Ministry of Justice and Correctional Services. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Ms.
you
Pillay.
very much.
And before maybe we wrap up, I saw Advocate Maga there, I kept on looking there when he was trying to get some of the information we're talking about. I don't want to talk about it on air.
Nombambo team Kaizer Chiefs ngena star.
You see, I love guests like this who can
Fana style.
Fana babuyelo. Yeah, thank you so much. You know what that is. Let's not say it on air. 7 after 7 o'clock. Thank you so much. Until we meet again next time. Ciao for now.